Hello everyone. Just yesterday, the interactive skill trees for Borderlands 3 went live. You can click on any one of these links down here and you'll be taken to the skill tree. I'll link it in the description. For the purposes of this recording, I'm going to be focusing on Zane. If I play Borderlands 3 next month, I plan to main Zane. Before we get into the builds that I can foresee with him, let me go ahead and talk about Zane and Borderlands 3 a little bit, just so you can kind of understand the skill tree a little bit better. All of this information is from YouTube or the Borderlands 3 website. Okay, Zane has 2 action skill slots, which is more than the others. However, if Zane has both action skills slotted, then he has his grenades disabled. He does get that back through skills like this one over here, which is drone delivery. SNTNL will occasionally drop a free grenade based on Zane's current grenade mod while attacking enemies. I kind of like that mechanic. I don't see it as a hindrance. I was always bad at throwing grenades in Borderlands 1 2, so if skill wants to do it for me, I don't see a problem. The other thing too is Zane does have a passive skill that works with freeze and cryo. That's another thing that was mentioned in YouTube videos and on the website. There will be cryo weapons in this game along with radiation. I think they're going to be the new weapons to the Borderlands franchise. Yeah, so kind of with that in mind, let's go and get into the build. So I can foresee the most common build being the shield build. You get damage for being behind the shield and everything, so this is perhaps the most straightforward and easiest to work with of the builds. You'll notice further down the tree you'll get action skill cooldown rate for having your shield to full. There are other skills like that later on. We'll see them in a minute. But here's another interesting one that's not related to shields. Whenever Zane is damaged, he gains damage resistance against that damage type. The one thing that isn't mentioned is if this applies to non-elemental damage. Because if this is all damage types, then that means it's a rotating shield, essentially. It's certainly going to be a lot more valuable than this over here, which is Brain Freeze. I looked at the numbers for this, and it requires you to score a critical hit on an enemy. Even if you score a critical hit, there's only a 20% chance they'll be slowed. So you only have a 20% chance to get a stack on them. And you have to continue doing that until they're frozen. So unless you can have like 60% crit rate, I don't foresee this as a skill that will actually have any use. At least not in comparison to this one, because this one actually will save your hide. Moving on, this is the other shield passive. When his shields are active, he gains gun damage and accuracy. The bonus is based on the amount of shields he has, so same thing as Adrenaline up there. Later on, Zane starts showing more of an interaction with Elemental, as you can see here. Status effect duration is minus by 50%. And then over here you have resistance to non-elemental damage. If you kill an enemy, all elemental damage Zane takes is converted to non-elemental damage. And then, on top of that, he gets a 15% damage reduction with that. Now, this can be triggered numerous times, and you'll see why in just a minute. But first, let's finish this tree. So, whenever Zane freezes an enemy, his shields instantly begin recharging. Now, this right here is one of the interactions with cryo weapons. There are other ones too, like this one over here. When Zane damages a frozen enemy with his weapon, he gains some of that damage back as health. But that one's not nearly as valuable as the other skill. I'll show that as well in a minute. This is another skill I don't see as being useful, because it's a stacking buff the longer your shields is full. So this requires you to not take damage for an extended period of time. I don't see that as being useful. This one over here, Zane's barrier upgrade, I don't see this as valuable as well. That's just because of the amount of points it takes to do the build that I'm trying to show on the screen, but also because of the fact that it requires you to be in a party where, they can benefit from this. Because if you're playing something like Amara seems to be more close to medium range combat, so she's not going to benefit from that. If you're grouped with, say, Flak or another Zane, then okay, I can see this as working, but overall, I don't see the point of this. This is really only for a group because it's not going to apply to Zane as much. So yeah, let's go and move into the other skill tree. This is the Hitman tree, and this is where you'll start seeing the drone. We'll go into the movement skill build a little bit later, but for right now, when running the shield build, I could foresee the cold bore being extremely useful for that, because the entire point of you putting up a shield is to hold your ground. Unfortunately, the shield will only block certain things, so you're going to have to deal with things that rush you, like psychos with melee weapons. If you're holding down the trigger with like a machine gun on a distant enemy and you've got a psycho rushing up to your right side, well, you're going to want to swap right away and deal with that problem. So this will allow you to not only swap really quickly, but deal bonus damage to the enemy causing you a problem. Later on, you'll get reload speed, which is going to be important for later on. You'll see that as well. Drone delivery, as mentioned earlier, that's pretty awesome. The drone does help with the whole hold your ground scenario because it's essentially another gun in the field. So this definitely does help. Salvation is much more versatile than what we were seeing earlier with the skill down here, which was refreshment, because this requires the enemy to be frozen. It's going to require you to have a very specific setup, but this is just straight up damage, so you get this all the time. This is the start of what I was talking about with all of this up here. Because most of this is kill skills on this build, this right here will increase the effect and duration of it, and then eventually you get down into here with fire rate on a kill skill, this, which is duration return. Now there's a reason I didn't go this. It's a kill skill that says Zane's next 5 shots all have a chance to fire an additional projectile. It's only 50% chance, so you could blank out on 4 and only get 1, so I don't see a point in that. When you're running the shield build, you want the shield up as much as possible, so this is more beneficial than that. And then finally we go down here. This is exactly what I was talking about with the skill points. I needed all the skill points to get down here. Seeing red. Activating an action skill automatically activates all of Zane's kill skills. So that includes these 2 here, this up here, this right here, this right here. Yeah, so you can see that this triggers a lot. And this will all trigger the second you put up a shield, or if you throw a drone. So Zane actually has more skills in use than the other people. Because in prior Borderlands, kill skills really didn't see much of a use, at least in comparison to passive skills. That's because they required a very specific thing to function. But Zane essentially changes all of that by saying, okay, let me just activate a skill, and I get all of those bonuses. So this is why I'm saying that the shield build will probably be better, because you're supported by a drone, and essentially all you have to do is just use your skills. You sit in one spot, use your skills, kill. That's it. As far as the skill modifications go, I did put in Bad Dose, which is basically a debuff and a buff. And then this one, Boomsday, which adds rocket pods to the drone. You'll notice that I didn't go Cryo or Almighty Ordnance, and this is because of the fact that this lowers the drone damage, and you really want this drone supporting you more than doing support, like true support stuff. Like, damage support is what you want from the drone, not like true support. That's because I can foresee a situation in which, like, say you've got a badass in front of you, you throw the drone at that, and let's just say you get flanked by psychos, then you just leave the drone to its own business with the badass, kill the psychos, and by the time you turn around, it should be doing enough damage to them. Almighty Ordnance, unfortunately, can only be used once per action skill use. So I don't see that as long-lasting as Boomsday. Another skill over here that I did consider is very limited in comparison to Bad Dose, because it requires a shield to drain. There are some enemies in the game that don't have shields, so Bad Dose will definitely do more for that. On the other side, for the shield, I have the heal skill because it gives shield recharge delay as well as reload speed. Because this build is entirely focused on keeping shields at max, this helps tremendously with recuperating should something happen kind of bad. And then this one over here is just for more gun damage. I could go with Deterrence Field, but that's going to be a foreseeable thing because like it seems great at the base of it, but the question is how many enemies are going to be melee that are truly going to be a problem to Zane. I imagine with the way this build is, you'll do enough damage to clear most enemies. The only thing that I can really see being a problem is those little psychos that happen to run up with melee weapons. Those things die usually in the first 2 shots anyways, so I don't see a point in expending that slot for that. Because like with this is more gun damage, so as long as something is shooting the barrier while I'm dealing with the psycho, then I'm fine. So that's kind of my reason for that. Okay, we can now talk about the movement speed build. This is the one that I don't see as working as well as this particular build that I'm showing. And that's just because you have to be constantly on the move. You can see that they're over here and more over on the other side, but this is a kill skill, which again can be triggered by the end of the tree. And then this one over here, which is gun damage based on how fast you're moving. Based on how fast you're moving, the gun damage bonus goes up. So the reason I don't see this being used as much right away is because of the fact you have to be constantly moving. If you have to run into a bunch of enemies that's just going to cause a lot of damage, then eventually you're just going to have to retreat and not see much with that. With the shield build, you don't have to worry about that. You can take on numerous amounts of enemies at once. You don't have to worry about running in there or anything. But if you did do this build, then you would run these 2 up here, and of course get down there, but you would switch over to this tree instead of the shield tree if you're doing the movement speed thing. And that's because you get gun damage for each active action skill, which is the Digiclone and the other ones. If you're going to be running all over the place, then yeah, you're going to need a Digiclone to distract them. The shield really wouldn't work too well in that scenario. But yeah, there's other skills in here that kind of help with that, like this, which increases your movement speed for each active action skill, which would further the bonus over there. Eventually you get down into other things like Trick of the Light, which deals bonus damage to the enemy if they're not targeting Zane. Again, that's going to require Digiclone. And then of course Digiclone gets a copy of Zane's weapon. So yeah, there's a lot of things in here that would work better with movement than shield if you did that route. But again, I don't foresee that as being a build that's probably going to be used a lot, just because of the fact that the shield is doing a lot more. But yeah, so this in summary is just the build that I would do right here. You can kind of see the build right here. It's very basic. It's not that hard to follow. So there you have it. But yeah, that's all the thoughts that I have on Zane and his build. Thanks for listening.